Hi, I'm Sarah Vanderpool, and this is my first recording for our communication assignment. So, first off, I was born in 1985, and I identify as a older millennial, or often relate more to the Zennial generation. Identify more on the analog side of things because I remember life before everything was digital, instant, and searchable. Um, my major life events or changes first was analog to digital communication. What I remember from my formative years, we had a corded phone in my home on the wall. And if you wanted to talk to somebody, you could only go so far away, or you were trying to drag that cord out. And if you had siblings, they were having to wait on you too, because they might want to talk to somebody. But there's only one phone in the house, one number. Most homes, when I was young, did not have computers. Probably up until I'd say I was 12. Computers were not compulsory in the home. My home had what else? Two phones actually, but on the same line. One was corded, and the other was like a corded rotary dial phone. So that's like even worse than the dial pad. It's the one with the little ring, and you have to turn it and go past the numbers. My sister and I also shared a pager. Those were very in. We thought we were very cool to have that. What else in my generation? We passed handwritten notes in school. We'd fold them up in these little cute designs and slide them back and forth. It was the coolest thing ever. And then we'd save them in shoe boxes. So we have all these notes talking about all this silly stuff from school. I already touched on this, but we called people by phone. It was still a common thing. If we wanted to talk to them, if we didn't walk to their house and knock on their door, we called them. And research was the other big thing. I can remember spending many years and lots of time at the public library. We're doing research. It wasn't just at your fingertips, how it is now, search engines and data libraries. You had the little card catalogs, and you had to go out and find everything. So that was my major life event. One was digital to analog. And in my home, I also touch on that I had older parents. My father was 52 when I was born, and he actually grew up in the Depression era, so he greatly understood technology and the changes in communication. He, over his lifespan, went from sending telegraphs and hand stamp postage to sending text messages and emails. So if we think about the changes in communication over his 93-year lifespan, that's insane. We're sending something by wire, and it takes all this time, and then now we have like the instant text message, where he was able to send messages, email, and text us instantly and get, pretty much instant feedback from us. So to touch on how I think the analog versus digital changed my worldview, or my generation, or shaped my generation's worldview. We learned patience. We learned planning, because it wasn't going to happen right away. I remember when I first joined the military, and we had to look everything up by manuals. There was these huge books, and we had to take the quizzes, and it would just be a whole table full of all these manuals and a 3-hour test with like 300 questions on it. And there you go. You better look it up. You better figure it out. There was no control find feature, so there was a lot more patience and planning. You had your little little note card sheet ready to go. But we learned to be very resourceful and manually find information. We also learned, I think, adaptability and how quickly technology can change. We understand, both the older and the newer communication styles where I know my son, who's a teenager, does the Snapchat and text message, and he's got the social media, and I'm so old because I still text my sisters or email or even call them on the phone, and he just thinks that's so old-fashioned. So I think that's some of the values that shaped it. For my second major life event, I chose 9/11 because that happened when I was in 10th grade. And I remember the TVs and the teachers' whispers, but it changed our sense of safety, at least mine in the U.S., that we could be attacked. Like that wasn't, a thing. Living in a first world country, we don't experience bombings. And it definitely shaped my worldview to want to join the military and be part of that protective force. I understood a lot more about safety and crisis and public service because of what happened with the 9/11 terror attacks. It also showed, how important clear, accurate communication is during stressful or dangerous times. Some of the communication that came out of the one airplane and their ability to communicate and eventually crash the plane into a field was what saved a lot of lives, because that plane was headed for a different target. And that really brought home also the first responders, everyone that had to respond, how much communication they really had to have with searching and rescuing. That's mostly what I remember from that, and how it really changed our worldview was communication wise in public service. So I had to come up with my concrete communication examples, and I'm just going to list them off. I have handwritten notes in class, phone calls, pagers. We had a clear blue pager, and you could see like the inside, and we were the coolest thing ever, me and my sister. Library research, like the manual research where you have to like go look up on microfilm, going way back, or the card catalog and actually pull a book off the shelf, not the I'm going into a data catalog and I'm going to get the whole book digitally and excerpt the parts I need with Control Find or a search engine or a search bot. It took hours, but sometimes I do miss it. So paper manuals, I said that about the military, big books that tell you what to do, more planning before communication, which I can't 100% say that the planning before communication has changed in the military. We still do that. We still practice our communication, our steps, and even now in my civilian life, we practice being a better communicator, a clearer communicator. I think I already hit on the younger generation. My son, he's into texting and Snapchat, the pictures, all the emojis out there and the things, the reactions, just having a heart or exclamation point instead of actually saying, "That's awesome, I'm so proud of you." We just hit a button with a little symbol. It's not worse, it's just different. It's adapting over time. And I think that's important to remember that the newer generation does seem to have more nonverbal or partially nonverbal digital communication, which I tend to embrace. I will say, even though I call my sisters, I am a fan of nonverbal communication. Mostly because I have an auditory processing delay, and being able to read gives me more time to process versus if I'm hearing what I'm having to process and hold it in my working memory, which is a little short sometimes. So reading is preferable, or nonverbal communication tends to be preferable for me. But the main points, to sum it up, texting and Snapchat are not less real communication. They're newer versions of written communication. Right? We still see some writing over those Snapchats or little captions. My generation, like I said, passed the notes, the little triangles that we called footballs or stars, and we could throw them back and forth. My son's generation, he's 16. They text and snap all day, and they want to have their little streaks on Snapchat. So the channel's changed. But people were still trying to connect and create meaning through those new forms of communication. So concrete conflicts across generations, phone calls versus texts. My father was big about calling every day. He would call us till, dementia got him and he couldn't work the phone anymore. But it was respectful, it was direct, and it was personal. The younger generation may see texting first as more respectful because it is less intrusive, but you can't read emotions. It's really difficult to be emotive over text message and really read somebody's intent. Phone calls can feel urgent or demanding. Versus my generation, it feels personal and close. But to the younger generation, that conflict is that it feels urgent or demanding, that they need to answer right now. So a text gives someone time to process and respond. Personal connections. So I put that I have documented learning disabilities that sometimes affect my speaking, specifically with word finding. So sometimes I have a word salad, is what I call it. I say the wrong words, usually the right letters, but my brain selects the wrong word and then I sound totally crazy out there. Example would be, I mean door and I say daffodil. And if you don't know me, that sounds like, what is she drunk? Like, what is going on? And then I have a reduced working memory capacity. And if you don't know, your working memory is what allows you to hold something in your brain while you're listening. And also process. So like it's basically a struggle with complex processes, something like a word problem, or somebody's talking to me and I'm trying to also formulate what I'm going to say back while practicing active listening. Very difficult for me. A huge struggle. But I've learned to adapt by taking notes. I use note-taking software now because we're in that technological age, and it is wonderful. It is so wonderful for my job. I can read what's going on, and then I'm not like, oh, I don't know. I'm sorry, Miss Vanderpool doesn't know where we're at. I'm like, hey, this is my thought on it, because I can read it in real time. And I often let people know that up front so they don't think I'm being rude by looking at my phone with this note-taking software. I'm very upfront and embrace those differences in my personal communication style. So for closing takeaways, I have, as an older millennial zennial, that I carry both communication worlds. I understand corded phones and rotary dial phones and the beginning of those big old bulky cell phones. But I also remember handwritten notes and how important they are, and treasure that somebody was willing to spend their time writing out something to you. Libraries and research, all those wonderful paper manuals, 21 years ago when I started my military career in the Army, that all these younger children or adults now will not know about because they're computers and control find and everything's so easily accessible. But I also understand texting and emailing and smartphones and assistive technology that is wonderful for somebody like me who has some learning deficits and cognitive struggles. Especially AI has been a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. A study buddy, and it can just lay out information so wonderfully in different ways. And And those communication things have changed over time. They're new. We didn't have those when I was a kid, and growing up, I don't even think my parents believed in learning disabilities. I was just not putting enough effort in. And now it's like learning disabilities are a really well-known thing in special education and 504 plans, because our communication is just so much more open now. So communication and technology change, but the need to connect, understand each other, that stays the same. So as human beings, we have a need to stay connected with each other, and communicate. And with that, that is the closing of my assignment. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about me and my takeaways from the difference between my generation and the younger generation, and how it formed my life and my values. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.